Bright, M6, 30th of June 2026. And for those who might be watching on line, I'd just like to let everybody know that we have got a huge crowd here from the Paulpunka Panthers Baseball Club, and I commend them for coming in to hear about their permit, and I'm really excited for them. So, further ado, we'll move on to the meeting, and I will ask our CEO, Mr. Jeremy, to start with item 1.
All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. Video is focused on a specific area, however, audio from the entire room is captured. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. The reasoning behind recording council meetings is to hold us more accountable and to improve transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel, which is Alpine Shire Council, and will also be available on the YouTube channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. We move on to item 2, which is acknowledgement of traditional custodians and recognition of all people, and I'd ask all those who can to stand. Alpine Shire Council acknowledges the Tongarong peoples as the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today. Council also acknowledges all of the traditional owners of the wider lands of the area known as the Alpine Shire. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community over the years and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Thank you. Item 3 is confirmation of minutes from the ordinary council meeting held on the 26th of May 2026, and the recommendation is that the minutes of that meeting as circulated be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Ronco, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ronco?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Anderson?
Nothing to add.
Any other comments from councillors?
Yep.
Councillor Graham?
Yep. Thank you. The minutes, I'd like to make one small correction to them, as in those who were present at the meeting. I would like to confirm that I only attended once.
Thank you. We must have had double vision. We take this one to the vote after that. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The next item is apologies, and we have an apology from Councillor Peter Smith, who has an ongoing medical and couldn't be with us today, but hopefully be with us next month. We move on now to obituaries and congratulations, and I will start with Councillor Anderson on my right.
None.
Councillor Glenn? No. Councillor Graham? Councillor Ronco?
I have none for this month, thank you.
Councillor Townsend? Okay, that's all up to me. I wanted to congratulate the Rotary Club of Bright. I was fortunate enough to go to their changeover dinner last week, and one of the things that they talked about is the outreach van that looks at for cancer, and it was on, I know it was in the local paper this week as well, but what I heard when I was at the Rotary dinner was just how much effort went in and how many people were behind it and helped to make that happen. And I just think it was really worth pulling out as a congratulation, not least because they've identified something like 150 cases that may have got much worse before they got medical attention. So well done to the Rotary Club and TAFCO and all the other organisations that are part of it. I move on to item 6, which is declarations by councillors of conflict of interest. Councillor Ronco?
Yeah, I will have I would like to declare a conflict of interest on the item 8.2.2 for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Do any other councillors have a conflict of interest? No. The next item is item 7, public questions. Normally, for those people who haven't been to council meetings before, normally we ask for questions that have been submitted in writing to be addressed at this point in time. There have been none this month. So now I ask for questions from the floor. Questions are limited to items of public interest and preferably things that are on the agenda. and they need to be asked respectfully, and every person who asks a question can ask, so everyone can ask 2 questions, and then if there's too many questions being asked, then we need to set a time limit around what's being asked. So at this point in time, I would ask if anybody has a question from the floor. Fully expecting Mr. Dyer to say yes. Mr. Meddings, would you like to come up to the microphone? You'll need to turn it on and then state your name and where you're from and then ask your question.
Is it on? My name is Paul Lindsay Meddings. I'm from Bright in Victoria. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Paul Meddings. I'm the president of the Paul Punker Panthers Baseball Club. Our clubroom application is before you tonight at item 8.2.1. After a longer than expected process, we are incredibly grateful that this community project is recommended for approval. However, we do have concerns with a couple of the conditions surrounding the parking and landscaping portion, which we look forward to working with Council and the Shire to find the best way forward. We have provided you all with the latest plan set and our concerns via email. Our question to Council tonight is, will Council consider supporting our volunteer community club by moving an amendment on the floor tonight to remove the car parking condition and approve the permit based on the plan set we have emailed to you? I sincerely thank you all very much for your time and your consideration this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meddings, and I will direct that question to Ms. Cook. And just before you start answering, Ms. Cook, I just wanted everybody to know that we will be having a fairly detailed discussion about exactly the things that you've raised in the emails and the contacts that you've had with us when we get to that item.
So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Meddings. I can't answer the question as to what councillors will or won't support tonight. That is up to them. I can talk about the emailed in plans. My understanding is a set of plans was emailed in late last week for consideration on this application. There are statutory processes for undertaking amendments of plans, and unfortunately we can't consider email plans into the organisation as the statutory process, but I'll walk you through now the different processes in place so you can understand what we're bound to consider. So before an application is determined, so an application goes into our systems, it's a formal process, goes through an assessment against something called the Statutory Planning, the Planning and Environment Act. And there's lots of steps that we have to go through in those processes assigned with that application. Sorry, I'm explaining it for people who maybe don't have a background as well. I understand you do, Mr. Meddings. When that comes in, it comes in with an applicant. So somebody is assigned to have owned that application, and it comes in with an applicant. It comes in with a set of plans and a whole bunch of information. Then there's lots of, unfortunately, too complicated, and in this application, very much too complicated, I'll admit that, processes where we go over looking at the plans. There are lots of statutory bodies that need to look at the plans, need to provide consent, need to have a look at the zoning and what is allowed. They get advertised to the public. We consider any submissions from the public. All of the referral agencies get a chance to have a look at it and tell us what happens with those plans. And we consider all of that in the wrap-up, and as you'll see by how long this permit applications take, that consideration, that wrap-up can be quite complex. And then we provide a recommendation to council for determination. So if the plans that have come into council are referred to referral bodies, advertised, considered and assessed under all of the steps we have to do in legislation, then if there are amended plans to be considered, there are legislative steps for considering amended plans too. So a set of plans being emailed at the end of a process can't be considered to be a submission for an amendment to the plans. So if you would like us to consider planning amendment to the application which has been considered, which was submitted by Mr. Carter, this is Mr. Carter's application, then we require those plans to be formally submitted to the Outcome Shire Council Statutory Planning Department under something called a Section 57A application. The reason it's a 57A and not a 57 is we have to follow a different process if the plans you gave us originally have already been advertised to the community and have already gone to referral agencies. So before that process, you can put in something called a 57 and it follows one process. After advertising, it follows a different process because we've already taken the plans that were submitted and we've sent them out to everybody to comment on. So there is a formal set of processes for us to do that. So you put in an application under what's called 57A. It says, these are our plans, these are the reasons we're changing it. Here is our application fee, because there's another fee for that as well, just running you through the process. Here is now application signed by the owner of the property, which in the case of DECA, that says they're approving the amendment to the plans. It comes in via the applicant. So the applicant is Mr. Carter. If somebody else would like to do that on behalf of the club, we need formal consent by the applicant, and that consent then needs to be on all of the forms to say, actually, I'm consenting to somebody else submitting the plans, and then we go through the process. Now, what happens then is those plans are assessed to say how different are they to what was submitted originally. If they're very similar, that's a different process because we could say, well, generally they're the same to what we told the community they were in the first place. We do that assessment process. If they're not very similar, we have to send them back out for advertising. We have to go back to referral agencies and say, these plans aren't what you commented on before and we think they're not that similar. Here is your opportunity to comment again. That's the process if you want to put in plans to be considered under this application. None of that process has been followed to date, so we can't consider those plans having been emailed to us late last week because they're not considered a part of the current application. Does that make sense? Yes. So there's very defined statutory processes for that. In the permit, in the permit that approval recommendation that's before council today, you have some conditions, and I know you have concerns about some of those conditions, and we can talk through some of those as well. Condition 2 requires the submission of amended plans. So actually the permit's not even granted until plans are provided to council under that permit condition for amendment. So we thought that was a great opportunity. One thing is one, council has put that condition on there, but actually last week, DECA, who is your landowner, provided public manager land consent for the proposal, but they require you to submit us amended plans. They were not satisfied with the plans submitted, and they actually are requiring under condition 2 that you submit amended plans to us under that condition. So if the permit were to be granted today, that condition allows you to put in your amended plans for assessment. The only challenge with that is it requires those plans to be largely aligned with what you put in originally. It's called generally in accordance with. So if you put in a building that's got 2 rooms and you're sticking in amended plans that's got 7, we're going to say it's not generally in accordance with the original plans. If it's generally in accordance with, we can manage through those amended plans under that condition. And you don't have to do an amendment. And they'll be considered. You're required to put in amended plans under this condition anyway, so it's a good opportunity for you to do that. The challenge is going to be is if the plans you're proposing, and I don't know because I haven't seen them, the plans you're proposing, if they aren't generally in accordance, and you say, actually, we want to do something that's quite different to what we got our permit for, then there's another process which is quite similar to the first process, and you can see why. Because then we'll be saying, well, how different is the application, and do we need to go back out to the community? Do we need to go back to referral agencies? So that's a different process again, if your plans that you're proposing aren't generally in accordance with your planning permit. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yep, you can step back up to the microphone.
The changes that we've made to the plans, to the footprint of the structure, will not be changing much. The amount of rooms, the general things that we are putting into the facility won't be changing. Just slightly scope is going to be changing, as in outside facade and things like this, saving money where we can. Having that as I said earlier, has been a longer than expected process, costs have gone up. So the scope is the thing that we are looking to be amended, not a bigger building or smaller building. The footprint will be relatively the same size, just the things in it and on the outside will be slightly changed.
So I can't give you an assessment as to whether it's going to be considered generally in accordance or not because I don't know. It'll be a technical assessment against the plans. So if your plans are provided, if the condition's approved, if the permit's approved and your amended plans are then provided to the planning department under that condition 2, generally in accordance provision, they'll do an assessment. If they're looking through those plans and after doing the assessment they feel like it sits outside of the generally in accordance provision, they will have that discussion with you about pathways forward. And the pathway forward might be to put in an amended planning, a permit amendment under section 72 to amend those plans because it's out of the scope of the permit currently. But without having that assessment done, I can't give you that answer, but there is a pathway for all of these. And if the amended plans, even if they aren't generally in accordance, even if they sit outside of that under section 72, it doesn't necessarily mean that will need re-advertising and re-referral and things, because the assessment that's made on whether that re-advertising and re-referral is one, does the changes you've made impact the amenity of the surrounding community to their detriment? Like, is the plan so different that actually the surrounding amenity is different? And or does it impact any of the conditions or any of the things the referral agencies were particularly concerned with, so that they need to have another look at it for referral? So just because maybe it isn't generally in accordance and maybe it's resubmitted under an amendment, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to go out for all of the other stuff as well. It's kind of a bit of a process to work through it to work out what the right pathway is. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And could I ask about the other portion of the question? And that was potentially moving the car park condition from our permit.
So, Mr Meddings, I'll ask Ms Buckley to address that one.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll let Director Cook answer from a permit perspective. In terms of the car parking requirements, this was assessed by council's engineers as it is per standard process for developments. So council engineers completed a standard process under clause 52.06 of the planning scheme, which contains parking rates for different land uses. So they assess it against the land use and, essentially what the building type is. The rate is generally based on measures such as floor area, patron numbers, seats and other metrics depending upon the land use. In accordance with the conditions, we can work with the applicant on the location and the layout of the parking under the existing condition requirements. That's not set. So layout, so there's a minimum requirement based on the land use. The layout and the location can be worked on with council engineers.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Mr Meddings. Thank you to the directors. Any further questions from the floor? No? Pretty much for questions. We'll have a discussion up here when the item comes up. So I'm expecting we'll cover quite a lot of what you're concerned about. But if you've got a question, please ask it. Or if anybody has a question. I'm not that hard-nosed either. If you really desperately need to ask a question during our debate, we can go for it. I should, yeah, there you go.
Can I just ask a follow-up question regarding the car parking?
Yep. But you need to say what your name is and where you're from.
Adam Rosser. Just in regards, the first one I'd say is the applicant is the baseball club. We addressed that early on in the application. John sent a email to the councillors at the time. I know you've all changed. Yeah, we've confirmed that, and Rebecca also confirmed that as the planner. Regarding the plans, we've changed 2 lines at the request of DECA. We sent them in to Will, who's our conduit, to the planning department, so I'm unsure why you haven't received a copy of those plans. Regarding the car parking, originally we were told, and we've sent a letter to the councillors, that the use hasn't increased the amount of people that go to the reserve. Our application doesn't change the use in a way that would require additional car parking. There's adequate car parking for the existing use. We're actually just upgrading existing facilities with an old clubhouse we're putting a new clubhouse. Again, the planning department actually told us that we didn't need car parking, and we were under the impression that would not form part of the conditions. And that's why, so basically your explanation that the officer's report has actually said there's no parking at the reserve, and that's why there's parking required, which we all know is completely incorrect. So can you explain why, since we're not increasing the number of people that will go to the reserve, why we do need car parking?
Thank you, Mr Rosser. I won't go into detail about the specific assessment now because I don't have it in front of me, but we can certainly sit down with the applicants to understand how that's been reached, and it's based on very set requirements under the planning scheme as to when you change floor area, use, etc. Now, as part of this, I did have our engineers recheck it in the last few weeks because it was a historical request from some time ago. I think maybe 2022 was the earliest. More than happy to sit down with the applicant, the club, if that's the case, if that's been formalised, and talk through how that was reached and why the requirement is. It's a very, very standard process for developments for us to do, so I'm more than happy to sit down and go through that with you and the club if they're formally the applicant.
Thank you, Sarah.
No problem.
Obviously, the issue we have is that adding that condition onto our permit and obviously not making us aware of the conditions throughout the 4-year process, and we only had the 1 day to respond, makes it very difficult for us for a project that's so far over budget already. Having the condition on the permit, we're actually committed to fulfil all those conditions. I understand there's another, you're looking at car parking later on in the agenda, but that doesn't necessarily help the club. And as you see, lots of things get moved on from, pushed from year to year. And if council don't go ahead and complete that car parking, then we're unable to complete our project if we have that condition as part of the permit. So I do ask the councillors that they could consider removing that condition when you get to talk about the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Rosser. Any further questions from the floor? No, Mr Dyer.
Good evening, councillors and mayor and the gallery. My name's Ray Dyer and I reside at Buffalo River. Now, this is the 3rd month. My question is to the CEO. This is the 3rd month that I'll be speaking about Centenary Park toilets. I spoke 3 months ago saying how much the pressure on those taps are in the toilets and all the water is all over the floor. Well, if you have a look today, it's not just water, it's mud too. And it can be a trip hazard or a slip hazard. Now, that hasn't been done yet, Will. Now, if I come back in 4 weeks and mention it again, there will be trouble. Not only is the taps still powerful, they are also at Centenary Park in Myrtle, not Centenary, Jubilee Park in Myrtleford. You haven't done those either. Also, one of the urinals is blocked in Centenary Park at the moment. There's a few other things that I've also mentioned, but I won't mention them now. But I will mention them next month if they're not done also. Now, my next question, or if you'd like to respond, Will, you can.
Thank you, Mr Dyer. I appreciate your feedback as always, and we'll get the team to look into the service requests that have been raised.
Now, my next question is to the Mayor. Madam Mayor, about 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, out the front in the foyer here, before the meeting, I spoke to you about my electric bike, which has been ongoing for well over 5 years. And your comment at that time was, it's not the time nor place. Well, I'm asking you straight out now, when is the time and place? as I said, I believe the bike should not have been taken in the first place. It went, and the Shire said to Doug Ingalls that the bike had been disposed of early in the piece, and then come September the bike turns up and I got to pay $150, which I refused to pay, and I had to sign pieces of paper to say that I accept the responsibilities. Well, I don't accept any of those, and I believe I should be given a bike, as I said to Will, replaced, because that bike should not have been taken in the first place. When the council turns around, I mentioned it to him, Ron Janis, his comment was, take it up with the police. That's not a comment of a mayor. So, Sarah, have you worked out when we can have a meeting about this bike?
Mr Dyer,
Or what's happening?
quite happy to have a meeting with you. This is not the forum to discuss your bike.
Pardon?
This is not the forum to discuss your bike, but I'm quite happy to have a meeting with you at a time that's mutually convenient.
That's fine. Well, maybe if they hadn't said something tonight, it would never have happened in the first place. But we'll see how long it takes. Thank you, Miss Mayor, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Dyer.
I'm shooting through because I've got a little dog in my car and
Sure.
I don't like sitting back and getting stressed.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the floor? Nope. There we go. Thank you, those who have stepped forward and tried to clarify a bit of what's going on. We move now on to presentations of reports by officers. So we move straight into Director of Assets, Ms Buckley, item 8.1.1.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.1.1, award of contract, provision of swimming pools management services in Alpine, Indigo and Towong Shires. This report relates to the award of a contract for the management and operation of the Bright Sports Centre and seasonal pools. The contract term is for 3 years with the option to extend for up to 3 additional one-year periods. Council operates the Bright Sports Centre, 2 seasonal pools at Mount Beauty and Myrtleford, and provides lifeguard supervision at the Brighton Paulpunka River pools for the summer holiday period only. Up to 2021, Council directly managed these facilities through a labour hire agreement with Momentum One Shared Services Pty Ltd. In 2021, Council conducted a joint tender with Indigo Shire Council to assess the operation and management options for the seasonal pools in the Bright Sports Centre. At the ordinary council meeting held on the 3rd of August 2021, Council awarded the contract to Belgravia Leisure for the provision of swimming pools and management of the operation of the Bright Sports Centre for a 3-year term. The contract commenced in September 2021 for an estimated cost of $1,155,758. In late 2025, Alpine, Indigo and Towong Shires met to discuss synergies in the management of their facilities, and the 3 shires acknowledged that Alpine Shire Council also operates year-round Bright Sports Centre. Recognising the benefits of a regional approach and building on the work that the shires had previously undertaken, the 3 councils agreed to undertake another joint procurement process across the aquatic operations. A memorandum of understanding was developed for the joint process, which outlines the intent and key roles and responsibilities of each party, with Indigo Shire Council acting as the lead procurement. The tender evaluation panel was made up of a variety of staff which are reflected in the report. Council officers from each council with subject matter expertise were made available as technical support as well. The request for tender opened on the 13th of April 2026 and closed on the 18th of May 2026. A total of 8 organisations registered their interest and 3 submissions were received. The key selection criteria that they were assessed against can be found in the report. Some key issues to highlight: the appropriate management and operation of these facilities is important as they have significant economic development, environmental and social impacts. As this procurement seeks to appoint a single operator across all 3 shires, failure to identify a single suitable operator would mean a contract not being awarded post this meeting for any of the councils. If the three councils do approve to award the contract to the same operator, individual contracts will be negotiated between the operator and relevant councils with their own operating costs, and key performance indicators will be similar across all three councils. The financial and resource implications: the initial 3-year period commencing on the 1st of September 2026 will have a total cost to council for the 3-year term of $1,361,881, with 3 1-year extension options available to council. It's worth noting that for the 26-27 financial year, the total cost is actually $421,544, which comprises a portion, which is reflected in the report, from the remaining contract period from the 1st of July to the 31st of August, and the remainder for the financial year from the 1st of September to the 30th of June 2027. If awarded tonight, as there will be no change to the operator, council will continue to work with the provider to ensure appropriate communication and community engagement regarding the operations. Therefore, this evening, it is recommended that council notes that Alpine, Indigo, Tower Shires have chosen to conduct a joint procurement process for the provision of this service, and that a successful outcome is conditional on all three councils awarding a contract to the same operator, conditional on similar decisions by the three councils, that we award the provision of swimming pools management services in Alpine Shire to Belgravia for a 3-year period commencing the 1st of September 2026, with 3 1-year extension options at a contract price for the initial 3-year term of $1,361,881, and delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise the details and execute the contract documents on its behalf.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. Councillors. Moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Byrne. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Ms Buckley. I note there's 12 pools along between the 3 shires, of which we have 5, 2 of them being the river pools. I think this is probably a good move, given 12 pools and the economy of scale that should bring. So I think good move.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Byrne.
Director Buckley, there's a significant difference in the first 5 years of the contract for managing the pools with Belgravia. Considering moving into year 6, there's considerable savings. Can you explain the differences between the two?
I can. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. The current contract with Belgravia Leisure saw a significant saving, as you reflected, if we were to either extend for the 6-year term or go into a new contract if they were to be the successful contractor. That was a reduction of $100,000 in what council was required to pay, and that was largely due to the joint efforts of council officers with Belgravia to improve patronage at the site, and also improvements to infrastructure such as the pool shells and also gym equipment at the Bright Sports Centre as well, a subsidy of $100,000. You'll also note in the report that council's chosen to remove the utility cost to Belgravia because it's actually, we receive a saving paying it direct ourselves, so significant savings.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Anyone like to talk against the motion? Councillor Anderson.
The contract covers the river pools, which is pretty unique to our shire. I know there's been some concerns around swimmers' safety in the last few seasons. Are there any sort of provisions in the contract to sort of address safety issues, or are they going to be upheld from what we've been doing recently?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. It's the latter, so they'll be upheld. So currently we follow all of the safety requirements in accordance with LSV, Life Saving Victoria. That's a variety of ensuring that we've got appropriate infrastructure there to deter people to swim there when it's not lifeguarded, right through to having the appropriate number of lifeguards and their qualifications being at certain levels to be present when the river pools are open. So that will continue into the new contract.
Thank you. Further questions, councillors? No? We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you, and carried. Item 8.1.2, community energy upgrades.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 8.1.2, Community Energy Upgrades Fund. Excuse me. Alpine Shire Council has been successful in its application for the Australian Government's Community Energy Upgrades Fund Round 2 program for grant funding of $350,000, with a $350,000 co-contribution from Council for project completion by the 31st of March 2028. It's worth noting that the original funding application that was put forward in June 2025 to install PV generation and battery storage across multiple council facilities is required to be re-scoped, as several of the proposed projects in the initial grant have now been completed while we were on hold waiting to find out about the funding, which we initially didn't think we were successful in. The Australian Government's Community Energy Upgrade Fund is provided and aims to enhance grid stability, reduce energy costs and strengthen local energy resilience. Council's application was assessed and, as I mentioned, placed on a reserve list. This determination was subsequently revised by the funding body as additional funding became available. Council has an ongoing renewable energy generation and storage installation program as per the commitments in Alpine Shire Council's Climate Action Plan 21 to 25, and those specific actions are listed in the Council Report 1.1 and 3.1. Supporting this grant funding opportunity will assist in delivering a significant amount of recommendations of the Climate Action Plan. To prioritise the revised list of projects for this funding opportunity, consideration will be given to facilities with high energy bills, facilities with gas usage, and also facilities with inefficient, unreliable equipment and appliances. The proposed project list is expected to comprise a combined capital expenditure estimate that will meet the full $700,000 total cost amount, including 10% contingency. Some issues worth focusing on to maximise the grant opportunity and ensure the resulting energy cost savings are shared across the community. Tenanted facilities for which Council is not directly responsible for utility payments may be included. There will be a large focus on solar PV and battery installations, gas, hot water and heating, LED lighting. Listed in the report are the policy implication, and I made specific mention to the Climate Action Plan. Financial and resource implications. It is proposed that the co-contribution expenditure to be spread over 2 financial years, with $200,000 included in the Alpine Shire Council budget 26-27, and the remaining $150,000 considered as part of the preparation of the Alpine Shire Council budget 27-28. Once the prioritised list of projects is complete, the request for quote process will include more detailed design where required to ensure energy efficiency and a return on investment for optimisation. This funding opportunity is expected to halve the capital expenditure required to implement a significant amount of identified energy efficient initiatives that Council was intending to carry out themselves. Committing the co-contribution in 26-27 and considering it for inclusion in 27-28 financial year budgets brings forward the planned capital expenditure to implement actions in the Alpine Shire Climate Action Plan. Therefore, this evening it is recommended that Council notes that Council's grant application to the fund round 2 was successful, commits to a co-contribution of $350,000 to match, notes the inclusion of $200,000 in the Alpine Shire budget 26-27, which will serve as a co-contribution, notes an allocation of $150,000 will be required and considered for inclusion in a future budget of the 27-28 Alpine Shire Council budget, notes that council officers are engaging with the grant funding authority to finalise the list, and delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise a list of preferred projects and execute the funding on Council's behalf.
Thank you again, Ms Buckley. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Wars. Moved, Councillor Graham. Seconded, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. This all sounds very expansive, this whole program. If we spend $700,000, how long before we have a break-even point, and therefore we can assume everything after that point would be savings?
Based on the types of projects, thank you, Councillor Graham, based on the types of projects that the team are currently analysing, obviously it's very different depending on the site and depending on whether it's solar or gas or diesel. But on average, across those sites that we're looking at, it'd be a payback of about $70,000 per year, so give or take. So we'd be breaking even at the 10-year mark, 9 to 10-year mark, depending on those savings when they're realised.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
So the CEO will be under delegation to sort out the list of projects. How will council be notified? How will the community be notified about what projects have been successful?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Prior to the list being finalised, we will be alerting council through briefing, and once secured through the funding agreement, we'll be engaging across social media and potentially media releases, etc. And we've also got a Climate Action website page that we can list it on as well.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Byrne?
Director Buckley, could you outline the greenhouse gas savings we might achieve for these projects coming up and the current projects underway across the last financial year?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Slightly complicated answer. I'll try and keep it simple in that a lot of the sites where we've installed solar and battery already or intending to are already on green power. So we largely do it for two reasons. One is to future-proof in the instance that we don't have green power from the grid anymore because the prices can change, and significant cost savings as well. If we look at those projects that we're proposing that aren't currently on green power, it would save us around about 27 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions each year. If all of those sites where we've implemented the infrastructure were to come off green power, it would be more likely 120 odd tonnes per year. But because we're on green power, it essentially future-proofs us. And in addition to that, it saves green power for the rest of the grid as well.
Thank you, Director Buckley. One more. Given our significant investment across this year and the following 2 years, which is roughly around $1 million, when each of these projects requires replacement in the future, have we factored in these costs, given that the governments of tomorrow may be less inclined to put grants out there for replacement?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. A lot of the infrastructure that we'll be installing will have an expected life of 18 to 20 years. So we wouldn't be expecting to replace them. Obviously, there's maintenance on them. And we do depreciate those assets. So we do take them into account and we forward plan for our asset plan goes for 10 years, but we'd be planning for the maintenance and then the renewal or replacement of them in 18 to 20 years. Given that they'll be paid off at the 10-year mark, beyond 10 years we'll be making money on the infrastructure before we have to replace it, which would go at least a large majority of the way to savings to replace them into the future.
Thank you. Further questions from the councillors here? No? We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously, and we move on to... We thank Ms Buckley for her input tonight.
Thank you.
And we move on to Director of Corporate and Community, Ms Cook, and the item we've all been waiting for, 8.2.1. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.1 being P 2022.146, corner of Martley Street and Nicholson Street, Porepunkah. The proposal is for the redevelopment of the Porepunkah Panthers Baseball Club rooms. Council's received a planning permit application that seeks approval for the redevelopment of the Porepunkah Panthers Baseball Club rooms. As a direct consequence of the current application, the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action in November 2025 notified Council that those parts of the Martley and Nicholson Street road reserves affected by the current proposal have been formally closed as road reserves and included as part of the broader Porepunkah Recreation Reserve. In addition, the department also advised that the Committee of Management for the broader Porepunkah Recreation Reserve had been appointed as delegated manager for those parts of the former Martley Street, Nicholson Street road reserves which are affected by the current application. As a direct consequence of the current application, the Department of Transport and Planning have notified Council that the Transport Zone Schedule 2 TRZ2 zoning of that part of the now former Nicholson Street Road Reserve affected by the current proposal is a zoning anomaly, and with that part of the now former road reserve not being an arterial road not under the management of the department. All land affected by the current application is contained within an area of Aboriginal cultural heritage sensitivity. With reference to the Porepunkah Recreation Reserve as affected by the current application, the buildings and works proposed is not considered of a high impact activity and therefore do not trigger a cultural heritage management plan requirement because pursuant to Regulation 46.3 of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Regulations 2018, those buildings and works are associated with a minor sports and recreation facility, and the Porepunkah Recreation Reserve was being lawfully used for that purpose immediately before 28th of May 2007. With reference to the parts of the former Martley Street and former Nicholson Street road reserves as affected by the current application, the applicant submitted a preliminary Aboriginal heritage test to the Secretary to the Department of the Premier and Cabinet, with the Secretary subsequently confirming that a Cultural Heritage Management Plan, or CHMP, is not required for those aspects of the proposal proposed to be located within the former road reserves. Plans submitted as part of the planning permit application indicate that the proposed clubhouse redevelopment would include buildings and works on the Porepunkah Recreation Reserve as well as within the former Martley Street and former Nicholson Street road reserves. The submitted plan detail is contained within your report. Council's development engineer has granted conditional consent to the proposal on the condition that the currently informal car parking area at the intersection of Martley and Nicholson Streets is formalised. For example, sealed, drained, line marked, illuminated and signed. As noted above, those parts of the Martley and Nicholson Street road reserves affected by the current proposal have recently been closed as road reserves and included as part of the broader Porepunkah Recreation Reserve, with the Committee of Management for the broader Porepunkah Recreation Reserve appointed as delegated manager for those parts of the former Martley Street, Nicholson Street road reserves affected by the current application. The Committee of Management have formally advised Council in writing that it supports the proposal subject to conditions which are contained within your report. Planning assessment has been undertaken against the Municipal Planning Strategy, or MPS, and the Planning Policy Framework, and these give support to the proposal with the policies listed within the report and a detailed assessment against each of the requirements of the Planning Policy Framework and zoning and overlays detailed in the report. In conclusion, the application is considered to be consistent with the Alpine Planning Scheme and is considered that it should be approved, the reasons outlined within your report. The recommendation on the application is that Council issue a planning permit for buildings and works associated with minor sports and recreation facility and the construction and display of a business identification sign in accordance with the conditions outlined in the attachment associated with this report and for the reasons 1 to 9 as is detailed. It's in the report and up on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Byrne. You guys are too slow. Councillor Anderson.
Okay, I'd just like to say a few things. It doesn't take much to see the difference sporting clubs make in our small communities. They're places where people come together, where friendships are made, where people find a sense of belonging and where for a little while life's challenges can be left at the gate. The Panthers are one of these clubs. In an area with so many sporting options, mountain biking, basketball, skiing, footy, netball, they've built something very special. They've shown they're a strong, sustainable club with members and supporters from right across the Alpine Shire. Their success speaks for itself, not just in the way they've achieved what they've achieved on the field, but in seeing local athletes go on to compete at state, national and international level. I'm right, international level. Getting to this point hasn't happened overnight. It's taken years of hard work, dedication and efforts of volunteers, coaches, players and families who have put so much in the club. Today I ask my fellow councillors to recognise this effort and support this recommendation, allowing the Panthers to move ahead with their clubhouse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Byrne, and before Councillor Byrne starts, I just thought I'd let everybody know that we did have some questions submitted by a club member, and we will address them at this point in time.
Thank you, Mayor. All of these questions were repeatedly came through in a number of emails that all the councillors received, and we thank you kindly for sending those in. I'm particularly addressing your particular email, Adam, and thank you for sending it in. And I'm going to walk through each of the questions you sent in 1 to 6 individually, so we can all have a discussion and understand where we all stand on those particular issues. The first one was about the actual plans. Now, we've had a detailed discussion about those particular plans. Would you like us to have another look at those, or do you think that that question was answered with Mr Midden's questions and Mr Ross's questions?
I don't think it was answered correctly, no. The detailed plans that were submitted were in response to a request from...
I think we need a microphone, sorry. Sorry, Adam.
Sorry, I'll start again. I don't think it was answered correctly. The detailed plans or the new set of plans that were submitted were in response to a request from DECA, and we were under the instruction to remove a dotted line which represented, you can probably see it, a boundary, which was the boundary between the PPRZ and the township zone. As we talked about in the report, the reservation has changed, but the actual boundary itself hasn't moved at all. That's the only thing that was done in those plans. We removed the dotted line. The line's still there, obviously, but we were asked to remove it on the plan set. So when you look at the planning scheme, minor changes like that are allowed, and before anyone's made a decision, which obviously you haven't made a decision tonight, you can actually submit plans and they can be reviewed by the planning department and form part of the application. So our only contact was through Will Jeremy. We had no direct contact with the planning department, and we followed the process that we were told to. So.
Ms Cook, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Mr Rosser. If the plans submitted are minor changes in nature to what is contained within the application that has been determined, then the condition 2 amendment process to submit the amended plans will address that issue. That process that requires amended plans to be submitted as a condition enables you to put minor amendments through on those plans, and was a requirement to us from DECA. As part of that process you undertake, they required us to have that condition on there.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So we were made aware of that process?
I'm sorry?
As the applicant, were we made aware of that process?
So it has come through as a condition. It came through last week from DECA that they required a condition on your permit for you to submit those amended plans under condition 2. So that is in the conditions that are before you today.
Yeah, so it was actually a condition sent to the Committee of Management before they were able to get public land managed consent. They had to actually make the changes to the plans, and we had to submit them back to DECA, and that's exactly what we did, and we just assumed that those plans would form part of the application.
So unfortunately that assumption is just incorrect. So what goes between the public land manager and DECA and yourselves is not a statutory process through council, so it's just a misunderstanding.
Mr Rosser, I know you're really passionate and you really want to have this, but we need to actually progress the... This is not a debate. It's not a debate between you and Ms Cook at this point in time. We're having a look at the whole permit process, and there's some more questions to answer, so I'd really appreciate if we could move on.
Yep. And can I just say quickly then, I'm happy for that condition to remain, that the minor changes be submitted, and then the plan set will be, well, the plan set that we've already put in front of you will be added to the application. We were just trying to avoid that step, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Moving on. Second question, on the delayed transport zone referral. The club explicitly notified the planning department that no works were occurring within the transport zone, as a batting cage and wire mesh fencing are completely existing and remain unchanged. Why did council deem it necessary to refer the application of the Department of Transport and Planning for such non-existent scope of works? And why was this referral triggered years after the original referrals were completed? A second part of that question, if you don't mind, does council typically undertake this function of referral to the Department of Transport on behalf of applicants in any other situation?
Lovely.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So no, council does not normally undertake this function and did not refer these plans to the Department of Transport and Planning. It is a slightly different process to that. On the plan submitted to council, it shows a part of a proposed widening end of a batting cage and part of a 10-metre long, 900mm high chain mesh ball stop fence extension, which extend into the Transport 2 zone. It is a requirement of the application at application time that the consent of the head of transport is provided with the application for this works in the Transport 2 zone. This was not provided when the application was submitted to council, and council did not identify it at the time. When we were going through the process of assessing the application in the last few weeks, it was identified that the Department of Transport head had not formally consented to the application. So we did not refer. We asked the transport head to consider it and provide consent on the club's behalf. Otherwise, we would have been unable to present a report to council for determination. It would have been considered unlawful. So we did not refer it. We asked for consent on the club's behalf so that we could progress their application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillor Byrne.
On the calculation of statutory days, the report references standard planning timeframes, but the official timeline shows a major procedural delay. Council received this application on 21 October 22 and had 28 days to issue a request for further information to stop the clock. Because Council took 52 days to issue the RFI on 12 December, the statutory clock was never paused. Can the department clarify how the processing time was calculated and confirm that this application has technically accumulated 1,348 statutory days against the state-mandated 60-day limit?
Thank you, Ms Cook.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. So statutory days is a legal calculation, and we acknowledge this application was first provided to council quite some significant time ago, not 47 days ago. However, an application is not considered lodged, and we are unable to consider an application until cultural heritage management has been proven on the application. Cultural heritage management was not provided to council until May of this year, which enabled us to legally lodge the application, which legally started the statutory day calculation. However, I acknowledge that the application was provided quite some time before that, and it was a process to get to cultural heritage being established.
Thank you.
Car parking. On car parking infrastructure, the officer's reports.
Let's finish all the questions and then we'll see if there's some response. Thanks.
On car parking infrastructure, the officer's report states that there is no on-site car parking spaces currently provided at the reserve. However, sheets A301 and A311 of the club's plans clearly label functional areas of existing parking and informal parking along Nicholson and Martley streets. Can the department clarify why the report claims there is zero existing parking? Has the planner been to the reserve? Why is council forcing a volunteer club to fund a full public intersection upgrade for a project that doesn't increase player numbers or intensify the existing use?
Councillor Byrne, I believe that question's already been answered by Director.
Done. Thank you. On the signage zoning error, the report states that the club sign faces a main tourist route and must turn inward because signs over 3 square metre are prohibited in the public park and recreation zone, PPRZ. However, sheet A301 shows the southern facade of the clubhouse sits on the former road reserve, which the report itself notes is a township zone. Under clause 52.05, the township zone falls under category 3 sign controls, where a sign of this size is discretionary and not prohibited. Can the department confirm that Category 3 controls apply here, meaning council has full discretion to approve the street-facing sign? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I've asked the planners to check the zoning of the area in question, and I have not got that answer for you today. The report states, and the planners have assessed that that sign is within the public parking operation zone, the PPRZ, which is a Category 4 zone and has quite strict restrictions on it. However, I've asked them to do a check of that zoning. However, the report sets out that a sign of the scale, location and style proposed by the club is not permitted in the PPRZ. In general, the conditions set out that a signage approach that would be more in keeping with the character of the area would be preferred. And should the club wish to have a sign which is visible from the public, it would need to be of a much more sympathetic size and scale to the surrounding area. Having said that, there are conditions in the attachments for councillors' considerations, and they could consider changes to the zone signage conditions if that's something that is desired.
And finally, the last question on landscaping and the reserve master plan. The conditions require the club to submit an independent landscape plan and plant large trees right against the clubhouse. Is the department aware that there is no physical space to plant trees there? And wouldn't it be more appropriate for internal council staff to manage this planting within the car park proposed by council, rather than placing this independent burden on the club? Finally, a question from me: how may this condition be practically met by council and the club?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I might break that into two answers. I can provide a planning answer, and I might refer to Director Buckley for a more practical landscaping answer, as those areas sit within her teams. So the landscaping plan is a standard requirement and is particularly important for buildings of this scale that are prominent in the public area. The landscaping plan condition at condition 3 requires the submission of a landscaping plan, and it also includes the references to the canopy tree components of the landscaping plan. Canopy trees are a requirement under clause 52.37 of the Alpine Planning Scheme, particularly for those parts of the site that are contained within the township zone. However, in developing the landscaping plan under the planning requirement on that condition, you can consider the placement and extent of the canopy trees. That condition also has a line underneath it, you might note, that says the responsible authority may consent in writing to vary any of these requirements. Those requirements are specifically regarding the landscaping and canopy tree requirements. So there is some discussion to be had there about the appropriate level of landscaping and the practicality of the canopy trees in that condition. And I'll pass over to Sarah for the other component.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne and Director Cook. From the Assets Directorate side, obviously, as per Director Cook's explanation, requirements under the permit conditions still need to be met, but from my perspective, our council arborists and open spaces team can certainly work with the applicant to reach an appropriate level of landscaping and the appropriate types of plants and locations, which could be a direction on site that we can meet with the applicant about.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions or comments from anybody? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. This process has taken far too long. It's frustrated the council staff, the councillors, and particularly the Panthers. I think it's time to move on, and so you guys can play your baseball. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further from Councillor Tenzin?
I'd just like to reinforce what Councillor Anderson said and just congratulate the Punka Panthers as well as the Alpine Shire staff for the massive amount of effort and working together. I know it hasn't been the easiest thing, but hopefully we're getting somewhere now. So, yeah, well done and congratulations to all.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, you go. You can go. You can have another go, yeah. Oh, yeah, right, reply.
It's a very quiet room. Just to walk through back over some of the sticking points that were coming from the Panthers. As far as parking concerns, as a council, would it be within our remit legally to say stuff parking they don't need parking? Or is what we're talking about, we can work with the club to manoeuvre the parking around and talk to that?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. The engineers are required, as I mentioned, under clause 52.06 of the planning scheme to assess the parking against rates for different land uses. So, as mentioned to Mr Rosser earlier, I can sit down and walk through that with the engineers and the applicant to show how they've determined those exact calculations. They won't move forward with saying it's not required anymore under 52.06. What I did mention was, and I'll have them reassess it again and speak to the applicant. What I did mention was that it's not specific to the location or the layout at that location. It's specific to the number of car parks and obviously the disabled car park as per the requirement of the type of the building and the land use. So we can certainly, I can make a commitment to work with the club on the location and layout, but I can also meet with the applicant, with the engineers to walk them through how we determined that calculation.
Also, I understand for the club that they're in a fiscal situation where they're trying to get their clubhouse built and they're concerned about the cost of car parking, building a car park. Am I to understand that we are looking further in our council meeting tonight at a budget submission to help in that effect?
That's correct. The public agenda that came out, I'm sure many members of the club may have noticed if they read it that there's a proposal to support that part of requiring them to meet the conditions through funding of car parking. Or the infrastructure required for car parking, I should say.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, at this point in time, we usually take this to the vote. Everybody ready? Anybody got any more questions, concerns? Okay, we'll take this recommendation that's in front of us to the vote. All those in favour? That'll be carried unanimously. No. Thanks. Can I also say you're welcome to leave now. We often take a break while people leave when they've come for a big item. Yeah, but if you wanted to leave, you can, or you're welcome to stick around for the rest of till we get to the budget, which is good. Yeah. Yeah. And if you are leaving, I just wanted to say while you go, don't wait. I'll just keep talking. Really look forward to working collaboratively and constructively with the club into the future to make this happen. That's good. Oh, we're still online, aren't we?
Yeah. Just waiting for Nora to come back.
Yep. And Ms Cook. Thank you, listeners. We now have one in the gallery. Oh, and we're sort of taking a bit of a recess. The next item, I'm just going to introduce it because it will be the item that Councillor Ronco is leaving for. You don't need to
we
leave.
need to note the time and
You don't need to leave right now, but I just want to get started. And the reason why is it material or general?
It's a general one, so yeah.
General conflict of interest because you're an employee, part-time casual employee.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Yep.
Material.
Okay, that's fine.
And Councillor Ronco is leaving the room at 6:10. And we move. And again, thank you, listeners, watchers. And we move on to item 8.2.2. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.2 relates to planning application 2023.149, being 17, 19A and 19B, McGeehan Crescent, Myrtleford. The proposal is for the use and development of a service industry or commercial laundry within 100 metres of land within a residential zone and reduction in car parking requirements. Council has received a planning permit application that seeks approval to use and develop land for the purposes of a commercial laundry and to reduce the associated car parking requirement. It is this reduction in the associated car parking requirement that provides the trigger for this to come for a council decision. Currently, the subject land consists of 2 separate properties containing 2 separate service industry land uses. It is proposed to use both sites to commercially launder linen and construct buildings and carry out works to facilitate that land use. The application was advertised in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Notice of the application was sent to 30 surrounding landowners and occupiers, and a sign was displayed on the subject land. 2 objections were received. Referrals were made to the Environmental Protection Authority under Section 55. Internal referrals were also made to Council's Development Engineer and to Council's Environmental Health Officer. An assessment and no objections were made from those referrals, subject to some conditions. 2 objections were received in response to the application, and an assessment of the issues raised in those objections is provided in your report in some detail. An assessment has been made against a state and local planning policy framework, and they give support to the proposal within the objectives and policy as listed in your report. It is recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit is issued for the use and development of a service industry commercial laundry within 100 metres of land within a residential zone, and a reduction of the car parking requirements in accordance with the conditions which are outlined in the attachments to this report. And I put that recommendation forward for council.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Councillors, I moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Byrne. Any comments, Councillor Anderson?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Byrne.
I'd just like to note it's wonderful to see businesses grow in Myrtleford industrial area. Thank you.
Anything from other councillors? No. Concur with Councillor Byrne, myself. We'll take this one to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And Councillor Ronco can come back. Councillor Ronco is returning to the room at 6:14. Thank you, Councillor Ronco. And we move on to item 8.2.3. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.3 relates to the Bright Rod Run 2026 designation of alcohol restrictions. This report notes the Bright Rod Run 2025 debrief outcomes, the proposed budget allocation for the safe operation of the informal Bright Town Centre event, and the review of traffic management, crowd safety and risk mitigation planned for the event in 2026. The report seeks approval for proposed alcohol restrictions to be designated under Alpine Shire Council's Community Local Law 2019 at clause 2.2.1 to take effect from 10 p.m. Thursday 5 November to 7 a.m. Monday 9 November of this year. The recommendation is in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Councillors, moved by Councillor Ronco, seconded by Councillor Tanzin. Councillor Ronco.
Just I would like to recognise the importance of this event in Shire, especially for our residents, and bring a lot of visitors to the region, so it's very important. And so I'm happy also to see that how much the Alpine Shire contribute to this event. So we have listed more than 70,000 for last year. So so it's something I think the Alpine Shire encourage, I think, and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Tanzin.
Just quickly, were there any changes to the restrictions from last year's restrictions, and are we aware of any issues that arose from last year's restrictions?
Thank you, Councillor Tanzin. I'm not aware of any issues arising out of last year's restrictions. A debrief did occur that included stakeholders and the committee, and there were no requests for changes to restrictions for this year.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Yes, Councillor Graham.
Thank you. I notice at 1C we proposed an allocation of $60,000 from this next year's budget to support the traffic management, risk mitigation, facility and waste management costs in the Bright CBD. But when we look back last year, it cost us $79,310. If we go over the $60,000 that we're going to allocate to them, who will be responsible for any additional costs?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Yes, you are correct. This year we did go over budget for this line item. However, $8,000 of that number you just quoted was actually provided to the committee for in-kind support of the event over and above the 60 through the event funding process last year. So that was an actual additional component that was allocated by council to the event. Over and above the 60. However, we will, as with all of our budgets, we work very hard to maintain our expenditure within budget. Having said that, there are inflationary costs that sometimes make it very difficult. We will, as with everything else, we will work very hard to maintain the support to the CBD through this long weekend within that $60,000 budget. However, should we not be able to manage that, then the cost will be borne by council. This is a council expenditure for maintenance of the amenity and the safety and the risk associated with that town centre component over that weekend.
Thank you. Further comments or questions from councillors? No? I just wanted to make a distinction about the $60,000 isn't being spent on the Rod Run event itself. It's being spent for, it's a question, I suppose, for safety and amenity around the town because of the event. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. With that clarity, I'm happy to take this one to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, and we move on to 8.2.4, the adoption of the 26-27 rates and charges. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report, being 8.2.4, adoption of the 2026-27 rates and charges, is to declare the Alpine Shire Council rates and charges to be raised for the 26-27 financial year for the period 1 July 2026 to the 30 June 2027. Council has prepared the 26-27 budget, which is aligned to delivering projects and services as contained in the Community Vision Council Plan and Municipal Health, Public Health and Wellbeing Plan for 2025 to 2029. Rates and charges are a significant revenue source for Council, and the collection of rates and charges is an important factor in funding Council services. The rates and charges to be levied, and which form part of the 2026 to 27 budget, provides a sound basis for Council to generate the revenue needed to support the implementation of the 26-27 budget and finance the objectives of the Council plan. In accordance with Section 94(1) of the Local Government Act, Council is required to declare rates and charges it intends to raise by 30 June for the following financial year. The total quantum of rates and charges raised complies with the state government rate cap, which limits the total increase in the average rates assessment revenue to 2.75% for the coming financial year. In 2025-2026, the Essential Services Commission reported Alpine Shire Council as non-compliant with the rate cap by $168,713. At its December 2025 council meeting, council resolved to address this unintentional rate cap breach by declaring rates and charges for the following financial year at an amount that would be no more than $168,713. This being below the amount of rates and charges which would have been raised if council was to apply the full rate cap as permitted under the Fair Go rate system. Following further review of this approach and advice from the regulator, council officers are recommending a change in approach to address the rate cap breach. The rate increase of 1.78%, which is proposed, is designed to return council to the rate base council would have achieved if it did not breach the rate cap in 2025-26. In addition, a rate credit based on the differential category and valuation will be raised to return the overpayment amount to ratepayers. Council will raise, collect and pass funds on for the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund as well. And the annual rate notice will be issued to all rateable and non-rateable properties in August 2026. The recommendation is in the report. It notes the advice from the Essential Services Commission regarding rectification of the rate cap non-compliance from 2025-2026, declares the rates and charges for 2026-27 that would return council to the rate base it would have achieved if it did not breach the rate cap in 2025-2026, declares the rates and charges to be raised for 2026-2027 and declares a rate credit to be applied to all rateable properties affected by the non-compliance of the 2025-2026 rate cap based on the below differential categories to return the overpayment amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. I do recognise a lot of work's gone into this. Councillors. Moved, Councillor Anderson. Seconded, Councillor Graham. Councillor Anderson.
Just a question around, I know that because of our rate breach, people are probably wondering, making sure that what process have we got in place to ensure that we don't have another breach of our rates?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So the circumstance that led to the unintentional rate cap breach last year was a technical one that was related to the bringing in of properties for which, in Dinner Plain, for which a special rate had previously been declared. There was a technical reason there, it was more difficult last year, that underpinned the mistake that was made in the rate cap breach, that led to the rate cap breach. So we don't have that current technical challenge without setting our rates this year, which is of assistance. However, we have also sought advice from the regulator, the Essential Services Commission, on the approach to be taken for rectification to ensure that our approach aligns with their expectations for rectification. And it does, in that we're returning the rate base to the same as it would have been if we had not breached the rate cap. So we are no better off than if we hadn't breached the rate cap. And we are also returning the monies that was overpaid to ratepayers through their assessment this year. So the Essential Services Commission has reviewed our approach and supported our approach for rectification. In addition, we've had an independent consultant who specialises in undertaking financial analysis review our actual numbers to ensure that we have calculated it all correctly, understanding that this is really very quite complicated.
Okay, I guess on that, did we pass their assessment? How much did their assessment cost? Because an independent, someone coming to independently look at our books. And is this a procedure that we'll follow every year now to ensure that we don't have another rate breach?
So the assessment undertaken by the independent consultant accorded with our assessment, which is great. They came to the same conclusions as us in terms of the numbers. So it was good for verifying. It cost in the vicinity of $5,000 to have that piece of work done. And so that is something we would need to consider ongoing, whether we considered the value, if we consider that to be of ongoing value to council, then we can definitely continue it. And it will be a decision for the next budget process as to whether we choose to undertake that process. Absolutely open to undertaking that process ongoing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. I know this has been quite an extensive piece of work, and I'm sure everyone in the community will be happy that this chapter is now finally closed and we're all going to move on. So well done for the work.
Thank Thank you, Councillor Graham. It's actually the work of a great team. Our finance and rates team, our corporate team, worked very hard and continue to do so for all of the budget-related items that are up today.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Ronco.
Yeah, just, it's already 1 year. Yeah, that's coming every year, so it's great. But yeah, last year I was advocating for a rate freeze for ratepayer due to the implementation of the new ESVF tax and the land tax. So, and for this year, so the landscape will be changed. So the inflation rate is around 4%, and the Victoria government has set the rate cap to 2.5%. So that means that the Alpanshire are spending more than collecting. So, well, for this year, so I can't advocate for freezing rates. So I'm happy to follow the recommendation by the director. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Further comments or questions? Following on from Councillor Ronco, I want to ask what the process is if people wanted to apply for hardship, or how would people find out how to do it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely, we have processes in place to assist with payment plans as well as with financial hardship cases. Should someone have concerns about paying their rates in this coming financial year, we really encourage customers to get in touch with us early. Often it is easier to put in place suitable payment plans or to work through options when we haven't got a significant debt already accrued. So we definitely have processes to assist with that. If there are any concerns, please contact our customer service area, either through our customer request buttons on our website. We've got an email address. There is a phone number you can call through, and you can have a confidential conversation with our rates department to see what we can do to assist.
Thank you very much. I have another question. Last year, I believe, and I hope I haven't lost a year here, we put some of our charges up and lost clients as a result. And I was just wondering, and I know through the process that we've adjusted our charges down again, but I wondered if we've considered or we are putting out any comments around that to get the clientele back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Correct, we have adjusted our charges for our facility users. The team has been engaging directly with those regular users over that, but I will ask them if they're going to put any media out in relation to social media posts, etc. I do have a feeling that one has gone out, but I'll check that. But they've certainly been dealing directly with those that are regular users of those facilities.
That's probably the most effective communication anyway. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour of adopting the rates and charges? That is carried unanimously. And we move on to 8.2.5, submissions to the draft 26-27 budget. Ms. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.5, submissions to the draft 26-27 budget. The purpose of this report is to respond to the submissions received on the draft Alpine Shire Council 26-27 budget and outline those changes which have been reflected in the final budget. So those are the changes between draft exhibition and the final budget, which is before you for adoption today. The recommendation is that Council considers that there were 8 written submissions received in accordance with our community engagement policy in relation to the draft Alpine Shire Council budget, considers a further submission to the draft Alpine Shire Council budget as a request received from the Popunka Panthers Baseball Club on the 22nd of March this year, and makes amendments to the budget to the draft budget as is defined in the tables which are in the report. Table A makes amendments to the draft budget related to capital expenditure. Table B makes amendments to the budget related to operational expenditure, that being employee costs and material and services costs. Table C makes changes to the budget related to income, being the rates and charges and the user fee final figures. as well as our recurrent operating grants, non-recurrent operating grants, non-recurrent capital grants, our non-recurrent and non-monetary contributions, and our various other movements in income. We're also asking Council to note the addition to the final budget of Council's co-contribution to successful state government tiny town grant funding applications, and to note that there were a number of community submissions that did not result in changes to the draft budget. Those submissions are detailed in the report, as well as the response against each submission, and each person will be notified in writing against those submissions, setting out the decision and the reasons for those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Anderson.
First one, I know we've got we've amended the budget for $60,000. Is this in direct response to the requirement of the Panthers to build a new car park?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. That's correct. So that amount has been determined by our internal engineering staff as to what it would cost to meet the requirements of that number of car parks, a disabled car park, and, you know, the size and the surface, etc., line marking. So it's taken all of that into consideration.
Secondly, I note a very large increase in the building upgrade program of $2.5 million, roughly. Maybe you might be able to answer this.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, and well done for spotting the very large number of change in our budget. So I'm not able to give much detail at the moment, but the officers have been working very closely with the state government on a building upgrade project. We're very confident that that project will be funded. However, at this stage, the government's asked that we don't share any details of what that project is until they have the opportunity to provide a formal announcement to the public. So we've reflected revenue and expenditure in next year's budget to allow us to start moving that forward on the proviso that we secure that funding, and further details will be following once the government is in a position to announce.
Finally, two other large movements, $208,000 for the Kia River Trail and $275,000 for Bright to Wandilligon Trail. Are these additional funds from Council or grant monies?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. It's grant funding through the Safe Local Roads program, which we were aware we were receiving a larger amount, and we had originally thought that those projects would be delivered across 2 financial years. The funding body has asked that Council deliver those this coming financial year and finish them by the end of the financial year. It's probably worth noting that the funding incorporates, which is also reflected in the change to the budget, it incorporates an increase in project managers to deliver those, and it's fully funded through that grant program as well.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Anderson.
Just following on about the question about the $60,000 for the car parking upgrade on the corner of Martley Street and Nicholson Street. I know we've just had discussions in the room here earlier with the Panthers about possibly moving or making a change to that particular car park. If there is a change made, will this budget submission, that amount, still be relevant? Like, will it still be applicable to a different location?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I can't, of course, give a 100% guarantee, but it's based on footprint size and what we thought was the best location. But as I committed to earlier in the meeting, we're happy to look at that. I'd be surprised if it was more than that, given we've allowed for contingency as well, and it's covering a set surface area with set infrastructure, but there's always latent conditions or conditions that you find on site that can impact these things, but I would hope that it would cover it.
So jump that hurdle when we get there?
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or questions from councillors? I wanted to just pull out, the budgets are really important part of what we do, and this year we had a different process where we asked the public very early on to engage, and we got 90-something responses. And then we went out for more solid community submissions and got 8, which we're talking about tonight. And I just wanted to thank all the people who put their time and effort in to give us the feedback, because it helps make the community more along what they want. And it's really important that people communicate with us. And congratulations to the community submissions that have may or may not go through, depending on the vote. Enough from me. All those in favour of the recommendation as it stands? There you go. Carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.6, 2.6 is adoption of 8.2.6. Mrs. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend adoption of the Alpine Shire Council 26-27 budget. Alpine Shire Council endorsed a draft budget 26-27 to be placed on public exhibition at the April 2026 Ordinary Council meeting, following a period of public exhibition and internal submission. Amendments and refinements have been made to prepare the Alpine Shire Council budget for 26-27. This budget projects an operating surplus of 7.2 million and an underlying operating deficit of 4.63 million, which has been influenced by a rate increase of 1.78%, as per the discussion we had on the previous report, capital works expenditure totalling $14.14 million, and a material and services budget of 15.12 million, which reflects the financial environment constrained by the rate cap and efforts to reduce our operating expenditure, and also a modest increase in employee expenditure reflecting resourcing requirements to deliver funded projects and services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Councillors? Councillor Anderson? Councillor Byrne? We could look the other way.
Maybe a question for Will Jeremy. Last budget council, we asked for some savings of about $1.5 million to be achieved. Was this achieved? And in this new budget, will we still be seeking to make some continued savings?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. That's a great question. So you're correct. I was tasked with finding savings, recurrent savings, so every single year into the future, $1.5 million. Together with the team and the organisation, we worked really, really hard on that, and in the end, we were able to achieve a recurrent saving, so that's every year into the future, of approximately $800,000. So whilst we didn't achieve the full $1.5 million that were requested of Council, we gave it a really, really hard go. We focused predominantly on the materials and services budget and did whatever we could with the constraints we work within to try and squeeze that budget. One of the highlights that we're particularly proud of is our work through the operations team to bring in-house some of the work that we've, over many, many years, we've been outsourcing, so having contractors deliver on our behalf, and we were able to achieve some of those, quite a proportion of those savings, through bringing those resources in-house, and we're actually delivering them with the internal team. So we achieved 800, you asked for $1.5 million, what does that mean? It means we haven't made as large a correction in Council's financial trajectory as we'd hoped. So I think if you reflect back to the point where you adopted the financial plan, I shared that we were on an unsustainable financial trajectory. We were overspending by about $2 million a year at that point in time, which was last September, October time. The position has improved significantly since then, of course, with that saving of $800,000 and also some work on the revenue side of the organisation. At the moment, when we look forward, based on this budget into the future, we're now overspending by about $800,000 a year. So we still have a challenge to address with the organisation, with Council, with the community, but it is a significantly smaller challenge than it was even this time. You know, September last year, we had a significantly larger challenge. So not out of the woods yet, but essentially, as I explained earlier, it pushes that day of reckoning where council has to make a choice between service delivery changes and potentially seeking an increased rate rise or an exemption to the rate cap. It pushes that decision point further out into the future. It buys council more time to work with the community, to work with the organisation to establish what more we can do in order to cut expenditure and increase our revenue in order to close that gap completely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Byrne?
Council's projecting an operating surplus in this year's budget of 7.2 million and an underlying operating deficit of 4.63 million. Is this a true reflection of the council's financial position as at June 27 next year?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll take that question. So an operating surplus of 7.2 million sounds very good. Unfortunately, an operating surplus, we call it an accounting surplus, is a number which includes items that don't really reflect our position. So, for example, where we receive grant money, it comes in and we count it as income. It forms part of our operating surplus. We may then expend that grant money within the financial year, but we don't expense it from our accounts, we depreciate it. So the money isn't in our bank account, we've spent it, but we're depreciating the asset rather than expensing it. So it shows up as a surplus. In addition, we receive things that we call non-monetary contributions. And this is where a developer may provide us with an asset as a part of their development. It might be drainage, it might be other types of assets that are associated with the development. They then gift them to council. Those assets have a value because they cost a value to develop, and they're gifted to council, and then council counts that as income, even though we receive no income. In effect, we receive an asset that we then need to manage and maintain into the future, and it becomes an expense to us, but it shows up on an accounting perspective as an income into our books and makes it look like we've got more money than we have. So that operating surplus is a little deceiving in terms of how much money council has. The number that's more important is our underlying operating deficit. So you'll see that we then have a number, it says underlying. So what we do with that number is we exclude those things that are clouding the picture for council's financial position, and it's our underlying number. And you'll see very quickly we've gone from an operating surplus to an underlying deficit. What a deficit means is that we are spending more in real terms than we have coming in. So we're in a deficit position, notwithstanding it looks like we've got $7 million of surplus. We are actually in a deficit position. Now, the other confusing thing in the numbers is we are not in as bad as a deficit position as this paper makes it look. So this shows us as having an underlying deficit position of $4.36 million. We do not have an underlying deficit position of $4.36 million if we account for some federal government funding that we receive, that we expect to receive every year. It's called a financial assistance grant. We expect to receive it every year, and this year the government has determined to pay it to us early, a proportion of it, 80% of it paid to us early. So that means that we are accounting to be under in our income. So our actual underlying position is still a deficit position, but it is more around the $460,000 position. So we are sitting at an underlying deficit position. In real terms, if we take away all the movement of money that clouds the picture a little bit, of $460,000. That means that this year, if we do all that movement of the things that make it confusing, we will spend $460,000 more than we have coming in as income. Now, that $460,000 then impacts on our cash position because we're paying for that out of our cash. So it's very much the same as your household budget. If you have a household budget and you have some savings, we're dipping into our savings by that amount.
Thank you, and that is absolutely the best description of surplus and deficit I've ever heard in this room. Anything further from movers and seconders? No? Councillor Ronco.
Just reflecting of also my point on the rate. So we have seen this year the inflation increase and the fuel crisis. So how much have been an impact on this budget 2026-2027?
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. I'm sorry, I missed the first point. So the second point was about petrol increases. What was the first one?
The first one was with inflation of 4% that is in Australia.
So, Council, thank you, Councillor Ronco. Council's income is constrained by the rate cap. The rate cap is tending to sit under the inflationary figures. So what that means in practicality is our income isn't matching inflation. It means we need to find ways of making our money go further. It's again no different from our household expenditure. You need to match your expenditure to your income, but our expenses are going up more quickly, particularly across certain categories of expense, more quickly than the rate cap is, and in some cases more quickly or higher than inflation. So insurances is a good example of that. In general, insurance costs, not just for council, across multiple sectors, across people's household insurances are going up higher than inflationary costs, and those inflationary costs are higher again than the rate cap. And our income that we're receiving. So there is a natural tension there between the amount of money we have coming in and what we have to spend. With regard to fuel prices, we've made an assessment against, it is just an assessment, it's a forecast on expected fuel price expenditure, and we have added some cost to the budget associated with those expected fuel prices going up, and it impacts by about $145,000 next financial year.
I'm really happy that I've been assessed correctly. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Any further comments or questions on the budget? One of our most important pieces of work for the year, in fact, probably the most important. I just wanted to make a comment that if we hadn't clawed back that 800,000, we're doing 1.2 mil plus deficit in real life. So well done, everybody. And also, once that work started to get to the 1.5 savings, there were some really good figures for a while, and then some more costs came in. So it was looking a lot better than we've ended up with. But absolute congratulations to the team for doing as well as they did, and I look forward to further work in that space before we have to cut services or ask for more money from the ratepayers. On that note, let's take us to vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And we move on to the dinner plane reserve. Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Report 8.2.7 Dinner Plane Reserve. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the final Dinner Plane Reserve expenditure for the 25-26 financial year, and to provide a recommendation for the permitted expenditure to be funded by the Dinner Plane Reserve from 1 July 2026 and aligned with the numbers in the 26-27 budget, which I note has just been adopted. The Financial Reserves and Restricted Cash Policy provides a framework for the governance of statutory and discretionary reserves, and this includes guidance around the creation, maintenance and closure of reserves. The Dinner Plane Reserve is an approved discretionary reserve under this policy, which segregates all dinner plane transactions from general council activity. During 24-25, Council approved ceasing the operation of the Dinner Plane Reserve from the 30th of June 2025. Any remaining balance of the reserve is to be utilised in accordance with the establishment of the Dinner Plane Reserve until all remaining funds are expended. A review of the operation of the reserve has been undertaken to ensure that all income and expenditure has been correctly attributed to allow for confidence in the final reserve balance. Council's financial statements will be audited by our external auditors as engaged by the Victorian Auditor General's Office prior to 31 October 2026. This audit will include the reserve balance and transactions received up until the 30th of June this year. Council is scheduled to approve those annual financial statements for the 25-26 year in October 2026, which will include the final remaining figures in the reserve balance. Now, at the March 2025 Ordinary Council meeting, Council approved expenditure of $431,102 for approved projects to be accounted from the Dinner Plane Reserve. In the preceding year, several developments have occurred, which include changes in capital works delivery for the Dinner Plain Activation Project and Dinner Plain Snowmaking Project. There was a misallocation of funds from village maintenance during the 25-26 budget process and a lower level of snowmaking maintenance than budgeted undertaken in that financial year. Snowmaking and snow slope play management expenditure was also calculated to be offset in this calculation by the income which has been generated by snow play activities in Dinner Plain. Therefore, in undertaking that assessment, it is now recommended that the permitted expenditure from the Dinner Plain Reserve for the 25-26 financial year is $645,494 in accordance with the breakdown of projects which is included in your recommendation. In addition, we are requesting the Council approves the use of the Dinner Plain Reserve to fund approved projects and services as listed in that recommendation for the 26-27 budget year. The recommendation lists projects totalling $224,000 and is aligned to what is contained in the approved 26-27 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors, Councillor Graham, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Graham.
When the Dinner Plain Reserve is fully expended in the next couple of years, does that mean that Dinner Plain will cease to be special and be treated like the same as everyone else is within the Shire? Or will we need to reintroduce a special rate sometime in the future? Because the special rate was bringing in $168,000 rough dollars a year, but we've already committed $175,000 for the bus, which is more than what the special rate was bringing in.
Councillor, Mr Jeremy will answer that one.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Perhaps a relatively high-level response just to say that we've got a team, our strategic planning team is working through a project in relation to Dinner Plain and what the potential future for Dinner Plain could look like, looking at various different models. The outcome of that piece of work will ultimately determine, what the cost to council is of servicing Dinner Plain, and from that will then result a decision from council about how it chooses to secure that funding, whether it's from general revenue and the rates that come in, or whether it needs to supplement that through funding from another stream, one of which could be a special rate. There's other alternatives. We could look at paid parking schemes, for example. So there's a range of potential options, but we need to do the strategic planning work first, I think, before we land on what is the cost to council into the future and how will that be sustainably funded into the future.
Thank you, Mr Jeremy. Good question. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, just quickly, obviously this season hasn't been looking very good snow-wise, so if we don't do much grooming or anything that requires maintenance of slopes, what will happen to the funding that's been allocated for that?
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. The contract is set up to pay as per the service that occurs. So if the grooming is reduced, our payment to the contractor for that would be reduced. Having said that, we've opened our snow play slope, toboggan slope, earlier this year, so larger expenses there. So, but if there's other grooming that's not done because of natural snowfall, then council wouldn't be charged for that service.
Any further comments or questions from council? Councillor Ronco.
Just on the point that we, Jamie, just mentioned the Dinner Plain future direction. So I just want also to encourage your residents. So we have right now a community survey on Alpine Engage. So go online and check if you want to have a say on the Dinner Plain future direction. I think it's the time. So, yep.
Thank you, Councillor Ronco. Yes, Councillor Ronco and myself both sat through 5 workshops with some really interesting information, and absolutely urge community members to have their say now as they can. Yeah. Any further comments or questions? No? We'll take this one to vote. All those in favour? That one is carried. And we move on to item 8.2.8.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.8 is our Domestic Animal Management Plan for 2026 to 2029. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the formal adoption of the Domestic Animal Management Plan following a 4-week consultation period. The draft Domestic Animal Management Plan was endorsed for public exhibition at the March Ordinary Council meeting. The public exhibition process ran through April and 133 responses were received in response to that public exhibition. It was a very good receipt of responses. The majority of those were received via online survey, but we also received some paper responses, a small amount. In seeking feedback on the draft Domestic Animal Management Plan, Council specifically requested community input on the proposed introduction of a 24-hour cat curfew, and the significant amount of feedback was related to the cat curfew item in particular received from the community. Of the responses received, over 90% of those responses provided comments in relation to the proposed 24-hour cat curfew, with 75% of responses received being in support of the introduction of the cat curfew. The reasons given in support included the protection of native wildlife and amenity concerns regarding the impact to others of roaming cats. Other matters raised were by those who had mixed feelings or did not support the introduction of a 24-hour cat curfew, and these matters included difficulties in containing cats or constructing an outdoor enclosure, the impact on cat welfare from being contained, and potentially the option to limit the curfew to a night-time period. There were also questions raised about how the curfew would be monitored and enforced. The matters raised by the public have been considered, and a response to these matters are aggregated and provided in detail in the report. While the introduction of a 24-hour cat confinement order would represent a change to past requirements for cat ownership in the Alpine Shire, the proposal received strong support through the community engagement process, and it is recommended through the resolution in your report that Council acknowledges the submissions received during the exhibition of the plan, adopts the plan, signs and seals the plan, provides a copy of the plan to the Secretary of Victoria's Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, which is a requirement of Council, and makes an order under Section 25 of the Domestic Animal Management Act Domestic Animal Act, 1994, to introduce 24-hour cat confinement. It is proposed that this confinement would be effective from the 1st of July 2027. So we are proposing a 12-month transition period. This will enable us to undertake some community engagement, some community education, provide some resources and for people to start preparing for the confinement order to come into play. So that is the proposal, and the recommendation is in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Mover, seconder. Moved Councillor Graham, seconded Councillor Tanzin. Councillor Graham, yeah, that's right, your turn.
Thank you. In relation to a cat curfew or confinement, I asked my favourite search engine to give me some statistics. And it came up with these ones. Cats kill over 1.5 billion, that's billion, native animals annually. They've contributed to the extension of 20 native mammal species. Domestic cats kill an estimated 340 to 390 million. And each pet cat kills, on average, 40 reptiles, 38 birds and 32 mammals annually. They also get injured when they fight or the pets turn feral. I've got a friend who's got cats with a confinement cage outside, but the cats can't get outside, and they are the most contented cats I've ever seen. So I support it fully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Tanzan.
Has there been any consideration into a 12-hour cat curfew over a 24-hour cat curfew, and why would we be going for the 24-hour cat curfew straight away?
Thank you, Councillor Tanzan. In undertaking a review initially, it was determined that a 24-hour cat curfew would be preferable because it provided greater advantages with regard to both wildlife protection and cat protection. A potential for a 12-hour cat curfew was something that did come back through community engagement. However, the support levels or the proposals for a 12-hour cat curfew was relatively low in comparison to the support for a 24-hour cat curfew.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Ronco.
Just a comment, just to underline again to residents the importance to register domestic animals. So I know that a council facilitates that. So that I recommend that everyone who is owner of pets to register to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
I guess just have we budgeted for the implementation of this? Yeah, we haven't. Okay, that's one.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. We will be undertaking this work internally using our existing resources, so there is no requirement for additional budget.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? No? Take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Now, note we didn't ask about anything except a cat curfew. the big issue. Thank you. That was unanimous. 8.2.9, Ms Cook.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.9 is our dog incident policy. The purpose of this report is to present the dog incident policy to Council for adoption. This is an operational policy which provides the framework for authorised officers to investigate and respond to dog attacks and incidents within the Shire. The dog incident policy is operational in nature and bound by the legislative framework of the Domestic Animal Act 1994. Consultation on the policy was undertaken for a period of 4 weeks, during which time 4 submissions were received. The matters raised in these submissions and a response to each is detailed in the report. The recommendation is that Council acknowledges the submissions received as part of the exhibition of the dog incident policy, adopts the dog incident policy and signs and seals the dog incident policy at the appropriate stage in the meeting. I have one more item to discuss with councillors. In undertaking a review of the dog incident policy attached to the agenda report, some minor corrections to that policy has been undertaken to address formatting, text styles and template issues within the policy. There is also some updated to the legislative references that was found to be out of date in the policy. This policy, the updated formatted version, will be the one that is provided to councillors for signing and sealing today, and we will attach that copy to the minutes of the meeting for anyone who wants to see that policy attached to the minutes of the meeting for today. I must also add that I failed to mention this in the last report about the Domestic Animal Management Plan. A similar update to the policy has been, the plan template has been undertaken for the Domestic Animal Management Plan. It's minor corrections to the policy, particularly in the document control section at the front that had not been appropriately completed. Minor format changes as the policy template needed an update and some text style updates to match the templates. No change to content of the policy. This will also be attached to the minutes of today's meetings as the final policy and the one provided to you for signing and sealing today. My apologies.
Thank you, Ms Cook. I don't believe we need to vote on format and text changes as the content's the same. But I'll take advice on that if anybody doesn't agree with me. Yep, good. Okay, councillors, a dog incident policy. Councillor Byrne, one from each side this time. Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne, nothing to add. Councillor Ronco.
Nothing to add.
Anybody else? No? Well, I think it's good we're going to have one. We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. And we move on to the next item, 8.2.10.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.10 is the adoption of the surveillance technology policy. The purpose of this report is to present the surveillance technology policy for adoption by Council following the public exhibition of the draft policy for 4 weeks during May 2026. One minor amendment has been made to the policy in response to submissions received. The surveillance technology policy is intended to replace the existing CCTV surveillance cameras policy and body-worn camera policy. The draft policy was endorsed for public exhibition for a 4-week period following the April 2026 Ordinary Council meeting. The existing policies were reviewed to ensure Council's use of surveillance technologies align with current legislation and recognise best practice. The policy outlines how Council will comply with relevant legislation, including the Surveillance Devices Act and the Privacy and Data Protection Act. Within the policy, there is a summary of submissions made. Overall, 4 public submissions and 1 internal submission was received. The submission summary is contained within the table on page 89, as well as Council's response. You will see there the note that policy was amended to require gender impact assessments and privacy impact assessments be undertaken for all new surveillance activities. The recommendation is that Council revokes the previous body-worn camera policy and CCTV surveillance cameras policy and acknowledges the submissions received as part of the exhibition of the surveillance technology policy, that Council adopts the surveillance technology policy and signs and seals the surveillance technology at the appropriate stage of the meeting. And also that it notes a transitional period of 1 year from the date of adoption for Council to onboard existing surveillance activities to the new policy standard. Thank you. And I may add that I believe there's also been some minor formatting changes to this policy as well that will be attached to the minutes of the document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Cook. And it might sound very dry, but it's really important that we've got to get things in place. So I offer it to the councillors to do what they need to do. Councillor Townsend, Councillor Ronco. Councillor Townsend, no. Councillor Ronco.
Yeah, nothing left to add, but just could we have an update on the implementation of this policy in a future general meeting just after the 12 months try?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from other councillors? I think it's really important that we make sure the governance around surveillance is tight, so well done. And we'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.11 is the adoption of the Risk Management Policy and Governance and Risk Framework document. The purpose of this report is to present the updated Risk Management Policy and Governance and Risk Framework to be considered by adoption for Council. As part of its ongoing commitment to risk management, Council is working to update these policies. Council maintains these documents to support effective identification, assessment and management of risks across its operations. These documents are required under our local government planning and reporting regulations. They are reviewed by the Alpine Shire Audit and Risk Committee and adopted by Council. The policy applies broadly to all Council duties, functions, powers, activities, operations and decisions. It establishes Council's risk culture, promotes openness in identifying and managing risks, and mandates key elements including maintaining a risk register, defining a risk appetite, reporting requirements and staff training. A review has been undertaken to ensure the policy and framework remain compliant, contemporary and aligned with best practice. The recommendation is that Council revokes the previous version of the policy and the framework, adopts the current policy and framework and signs and seals these at the appropriate stage of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Councillor Graham. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Graham.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Byrne.
I'd just like to commend the author of this document. It's a very particular and challenging piece of work to put together. Even though it's an internal-facing document, it guides everything that we do. So I'd like to publicly thank the officer.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. That would be our fabulous Kirsten McDonald. She's done an absolutely stellar job and she always does. So I will pass her thanks on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Just a quick one. There's a point here in governance and risk framework key changes, and it talks about clarification and strengthening the role of owners of governance of risk and compliance obligation. How does that look in the council organisation? What do you mean by that, ownership?
So thank you, Councillor Anderson. There will be some work undertaken over the next financial year to embed the changes in these documents into the organisation. Where a number of the where some of the operational work is required and is in how we elevate risk management within the organisation to be an ongoing activity that's responsible by everyone. It can be easy for both risk and governance functions for people to get into the detail of their day-to-day work and believe that risk and governance is potentially the responsibility of the risk officer or the governance officer. So it's an ongoing cultural change within the organisation to ensure that everybody's aware, one, of the tools that are available, that we're really embedding that risk framework into our organisation and we're supporting people to really manage risk and governance across the organisation.
Yep, super. Anything further? Yeah, just a comment. It's a critical governance role of council to ensure that risk is effectively identified and managed, and this is, as Councillor Burns pointed out, it's a great document, and I look forward to seeing it embedded. So well done, and I'll echo those sentiments of thanks to the person and people involved. Anything else from anybody? Take it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. And we move on to, wrong page, Audit and Risk Committee minutes of meeting 8.2.12.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.12 is our Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes from May 2026. The committee met on the 15th of May and considered several key items as well as the regular quarterly reports and standing items. An overview of the key items considered by the committee is provided in your reports and obviously in more detail in the minutes themselves. It is recommended that the committee council receives and notes the unconfirmed minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, which was held on the 15th of May 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Byrne, seconded Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Ronco.
Just, it was great again to attend this meeting as an observer, so it was a good meeting.
Super, thank you. Anything else from other councillors? No? We'll take this recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you. And we move on to 8.2.13.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.2.13 is our Audit and Risk Committee independent member remuneration. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council increases the remuneration of the Alpine Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee Chair and independent members effective from the 1st of July 2026. The Audit and Risk Committee provides an independent advisory function to Council, supporting oversight of governance and legislative compliance, financial and performance reporting, risk management frameworks and our internal and external audit program. Council's committee currently consists of 3 independent remunerated members, including the chair, with a 4th position which is vacant, and recruitment is to begin shortly. Should there be anyone listening who is interested in being on our Audit and Risk Committee, keep an eye out for our recruitment process for that member. It is a fabulous committee. The independent member remuneration was last reviewed in 2023, with annual indexation being linked to the ESC rate cap and scheduled 3-year review. And benchmarking analysis has been undertaken across 10 comparable Victorian councils, which indicate that Alpine Shire's remuneration sat towards the lower of the mid-range end. We have therefore reviewed the remuneration and we are recommending an increase to that remuneration profile. The recommendation is that Council sets the Independent Audit and Risk Committee member from remuneration from the 1st of July at $815 per meeting for the Chair and $680 per meeting for the independent members, and continues to undertake annual increases from 1 July each year in alignment with the ESC rate cap. Rounding this up to the nearest $5 increment, which is in accordance with the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. and acknowledges that there is an upper limit for reimbursement of travel expenses at $325 per member per year, with no annual indexation applying to this allowance, also in accordance with the Audit and Risk Committee Charter, and also implements a review of this remuneration and entitlements in another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Cook. Councillors. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Ronco. Councillor Byrne.
Director Cook, can you let us know how does our remuneration compare against similar smaller regional councils?
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. We undertook a benchmarking exercise focused on our neighbouring and other regional councils that were comparable to us. In that benchmarking exercise, there is actually a very wide spread. There is no legislative requirement for the quantum that you would remunerate your independent members or your chair on your audit committee, and we did discover a very wide spread across those councils that we looked at. We very much highly value our audit committee, and we believe they play a pivotal role in strengthening our governance processes in the organisation. And so we wanted to be positioned more competitively in the market. So currently, our Audit and Risk Committee remuneration sits towards the lower middle of that wide spread of banding that we compared it to, and our proposal does put it up into the higher middle of the spread. We wouldn't be up towards the top, we're definitely not towards the bottom, we are moving within the middle section of the banding.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Ronco, sorry.
I don't have any question, but just a comment that, yeah, I recognise too, it's very important to keep good independent member for this Audit and Risk Committee, so I recognise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Just for our audience, I'd like to clarify that we have 2 councillors on this committee and they do not receive any additional payments for their participation.
Thanks for the clarification. So no conflict of interest. We'll take this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to the end of all of our items from directors tonight, and I'd like to wish Ms Cook happy holidays when she goes. It won't be that long after tonight. Well done. Item 9 is informal meetings of councillors, and in our papers, and we have a list of what we attended. The recommendation is that we receive this list. Moved Councillor Chanson, seconded Councillor Ronco. Anything to add, any councillors? No? We will take that one to the vote then. All those in favour? And next item is presentation of reports by delegates, and I will start on my left with Councillor Tanzan.
No report to present today, so that's fine.
No. And none from me.
Cheap round.
So then we move on to general business, and I will start with Councillor Anderson on my right. Councillor Graham?
No, nothing here.
No general business for this month.
I had some, but I forgot what it is. So save it up till next month. CEO, Mr Jeremy, do you have some general business?
If I could, through you, Madam Mayor. So I was reflecting this evening on the challenging journey that the Porepunkah Panthers permit has followed since their submission in October 2022. And I think my reflection was there's a shared responsibility for that challenge. Some of it sits with us and some of it sits with the club. But if I reflect on the part that sits with us, through 2022 and into 2023, we had some significant challenges in our planning team. We had an under-resourced team and we had a lack of efficient process to handle permits. And my reflection is the difference that the team that we have today has managed to impart on that team over the last perhaps 18 months to 2 years. So that's Matt Nowaczewski, Rebecca Moy and Natalie Cook here. And the difference they've made is nothing short of dramatic. And I think if we were to receive a permit, in the same way today, it would receive a very different passage through the bureaucracy of local government. So that was my reflection. And I guess a thanks to Matt, a thanks to Beck, and a thanks to Natalie for the work that they've put in into processing those changes in the team. Piece of advice to the team here and also to the Panthers, we've got a process now which works really well, but it requires people to use and follow the process. So we've got a system called Greenlight. What we're finding with the permits that are submitted, the applications which come in now, which follow a process into Greenlight, they're being progressed very smoothly. There are very few hiccups. We don't lose documents. We comply with timeframes, and my recommendation to the Panthers is that they do whatever they possibly can to fall within that process, and then we will support them to give them the best journey they can from this point forward to get their clubhouse delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Jeremy. We move on to motions for which notice has previously been given, and there are none. And we move on to item 13, reception and reading of petitions. We did receive a petition on Monday as a business day, and there's some writing on the board for those who can read it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, would you like me to introduce this petition to you? So, as the Mayor outlined, the organisation received a petition. It was emailed to us on Sunday, so it missed the cut-off for the council meeting agenda, which is why the audience won't see it recorded in the council meeting agenda. Those in the room can see brief details that we've got up on the screen. But if I share with you, so the petition is to the Alpine Shire Council, and the request is that the Alpine Shire Council is to review its current approach to childcare service in our shire. So that's the headline. I'll give you a little bit more context, which was in the kind of the preamble. We urge the Alpine Shire Council to review the exclusive childcare lease arrangement currently in place, provide greater transparency about how childcare service decisions are made, explore opportunities for additional childcare providers to operate in the Alpine Shire, and prioritise affordability, accessibility and quality in future childcare planning. So that was the request which was put in through the petition. There are 78 signatories to that petition. We've carried out an assessment against Council's governance rules, and this petition complies with those governance rules. So tonight we're presenting this petition to Council for consideration for Council to receive this petition. And just to outline the Council, the process from this point, should Council choose to receive this petition this evening, then the organisation will essentially assess this petition and present a report back into a future Council meeting for Council's consideration. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sir Jeremy. I was going to fumble through that badly. Councillors, so we have a recommendation that we receive and note the petition, and that according to the governance rules, a report will be prepared and brought back to a council meeting in the future. Moved Councillor Tansen, seconded Councillor Graham. Councillor Tansen.
Nothing really specific to this one, but is there a right and a wrong way to put a petition forward?
Yes, there is a right and a wrong way to put the petition forward. There is instructions on our website about what is required for a petition. Is there anybody who knows enough about it who would outline it briefly now? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'd probably steer clear of trying to outline it now for risk of making an error. I would just suggest if anyone's interested in submitting a petition, that if they Google Alpine Shire Council petition, it will take you to the web page where we list all the requirements, and if they need support, they can come in through one of our service centres and we can provide that report. Madam Mayor, while I've got the floor, I would just like to make a comment in relation to that second point, which is presenting a report at a future ordinary council meeting. We received the petition yesterday, so we haven't started the process of even looking at the detail and working out how we would respond to that. If I reflect on the timeframes that apply internally for getting prepared for the July meeting, by Friday this week our officers are required to have prepared their agenda reports. So my reflection to Council is it would be unlikely that we would be able to do this petition due diligence if we were to push it to try and get it to the July ordinary council meeting, and I would seek for Council to note that it's much more likely that it would be a later meeting beyond the July meeting.
Thank you, Mr Jeremy. I'll take that as noted, as we've already moved the motion, but thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yep, thank you. I think the petition's made a couple of assumptions which I don't believe are correct, but I look forward to reading the report that the officers come up with.
Thank you. Other, Councillor Byrne?
Mr Jeremy, could you outline what would be the particular cut-off for when you receive a petition? So if they haven't met the cut-off by Sunday, what would it normally have been?
Thank you, Councillor Burns. So that appears to be an undefined point within our governance rules. It doesn't define at what point the cut-off is ahead of a council meeting. So we received it. It was emailed to us on Sunday. It was received into the office, of course, on Monday morning we're gathering. What we thought was important, even though we've had relatively short notice, is to give acknowledgement to the petitioner or the proponent of the petition for them to understand and receive confirmation that their petition has been received. So that's the purpose of bringing it this evening. We could, I think, legitimately have held on to it for a further month and then presented it to the July meeting, but we thought it was important, you know, given the effort that goes in, and there's a lot of passion behind these petitions, it's important for the proponent and for the signatories to the petition to hear that Council's received it, and we are going to work through it.
Thank you.
Any further comments or feedback? No. We'll take the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous and carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 14, documents for signing and sealing. Can we have move in a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by, was that at your hand? Yeah. Councillor Graham. We'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? Anyone want to say anything? Butted in. Confidential reports, we have none, and closure of meeting, and it's almost right, 7:26.